During the last few years, robot technology has been moving forward by leaps and bounds. Things that seemed impossible at the end of the 20th century have become reality. Industrial robots have become more sophisticated and have begun to be used in new areas. Robots in healthcare, home robots, and entertainment robots are being introduced on a wide front. In the future, we will have to learn to live side by side with robots, whether we like it or not. Robot researchers of today are broadening their views and combining pure technology with biology, sociology, and the behavioral sciences. Often, researchers have turned to the animal world in order to find optimal movement patterns and create functional designs for robots. Why start from scratch when animals have developed different useful characteristics during millions of years?
What's going on in the fly? How are they working? How are they moving their wings? What control strategies are they using? What are their sensors? And we're learning just so much from them.
In the 17th century, the French mathematician and philosopher René Descartes was inspired by animals when he created the Cartesian coordinate system, which we use today to describe certain robot movements. He was awakened by a buzzing fly and reasoned that the fly's position could be calculated by defining its distance from three walls connected by a common corner.
We've brought together both biologists and a wide variety of engineers to work on this one project. So we have people from mechanical engineering and material science, electrical engineering, computer science, all working on how do we design this device, and material scientists coming in and how do we build the actuators, and all of us taking inspiration from our biologist colleagues, having something which can fly around and sense. One question would be asked is, well, how small can you make it? And we're also, just in a very modest way, we can provide some of our technology back to the biologists, so hopefully they can do their measurements in a more efficient way.
A research team in New York has chosen to work with real live animals. After the terrorist attack on the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001, the idea was born to devise remotely controlled rats equipped with cameras and sensors.
The rats can be trained, for example, to search for humans buried in a rubble pile in a building. And it would be hard to have a robot carry a mass spectrometer of sufficient accuracy to be able to use it to detect the smell of a human.
This is a rat that we've implanted to be a robo-rat, and we've just started training him. The way we do it is we first implant 3 very fine wires into its brain, in certain regions of the brain. Here are these implants, and one of them, these very fine wires, goes into the pleasure center, and the other 2 goes into a part of the brain known as the somatosensory cortex. The idea is that we train the rat to move forward continuously, and when he does that, he keeps getting rewarded with pleasure. And at a certain time, when we wanted to turn left or right, we stimulate the somatosensory cortex so that the rat feels he's being touched on the cheek. And if the rat responds to a touch on the right cheek by turning right, he feels this burst of happiness. Correspondingly, if he responds on a touch of the left cheek by turning left, he feels another burst of happiness. But what we've also done is mounted small video cameras on top of the rat, so the operator can get a view of what the rat is seeing, a rat's eye view. And with that picture in front of him, he can teleoperate the rat to go where he wants, even when the rat has disappeared behind, say, rocks or under rubble and things like that.
Implants and stimuli such as these can also be used to influence humans.
There have been a few studies back in the 60s where this kind of pleasure center stimulation has been done in humans, and And for some reason, this research stopped. And I think it was considered to be generally unethical and probably also not useful for any clear medical purpose. And so for that reason, it really just hasn't been done in humans, and I don't think that it's a good idea to do it in humans.
But there are also people who are positive to bringing men and machines closer together. Ray Kurzweil, innovator, author, and technology debater, is one of these.
So if you talk to somebody in 2035, a normal biological person with a mother and father, you're going to be interacting with someone who is a hybrid of biological and non-biological intelligence. There are people like this today. You talk to someone with Parkinson's disease or a deaf person or someone who's had a neural implant. You're talking to somebody who has a computer in their brain.
And robot researchers around the world are putting great efforts into attempting to imitate the pinnacle of all creation, man. In Japan, they have made the greatest advancements in developing robots with human characteristics, humanoids. They are very enthusiastic at the prospect of sharing their everyday lives with robots. The Japanese have been entertained by robot heroes such as Astro Boy, who has been saving the world from different threats ever since the 1950s, and robots have never been considered a threat to employment. Japanese children come in contact with the latest robot technology early in life, both at school and out in society. There are also many university programs devoted to robot research working in close collaboration with industry. These programs have had a great influence on development. Sony and Honda are engaged in a struggle to see which will be first to produce a humanoid which can be put into every home. Mainly, it's a matter of pets and entertainment, but by extension, the idea is that robots will be capable of performing more advanced tasks.
今現在入ってる機能としては、あとは人を認識したりとかですね、動いてるものを見つけたりとかいうのができるんですけども、それをより個人の人それぞれに対してロボット自身が判断分かって、その人のためのサービスができる、あるいは支援ができるっていうのが次のロボットというふうに考えています。
Two-legged robots require advanced control systems in order to maintain their balance. Humanoids have been equipped with cameras and sensors, which make it possible to communicate with people in various ways. The knowledge gained from the development of humanoids can be applied to other products.
メインの方向性としては、私はその人間にとって人生のパートナーとなるようなロボットを開発していきたいと思って、別に人生とパートナーとなるようなロボットがたまたまお仕事をしたり、その老人ホームで活躍したりするということはあり得るでしょう。
オートバイにしろ車にしろ、やはりモビリティって我々呼んでるんですけども、モビリティのリーディングカンパニーとしてのホンダは次を何に目指すかっていった時に、その人型というか人間が二足で歩くロボットを作ろうと。
どうぞこちらでお待ちください。
Design is important in conveying a positive feeling and exhibiting human traits.
それでは失礼いたします。
Here, the designers have found their models in the world of films. In Star Wars, the intelligent, good-natured robots, R2-D2 and C-3PO, stand in sharp contrast to the robot armies of the powers of evil. The ones who know robots best are their creators.
I think R2 is popular because of his personality. He's kind of like the trusty dog, man's best friend, and he always helps out, his master, and he's always right by the side, and you could always depend on him. Very reliable. Unlike the real R2, that's the robot, and it's very unreliable sometimes when we're shooting.
Certainly people relate to R2-D2. There's something about him that's kind of warm and fuzzy, and that people don't feel intimidated or put off by. So I think that real robots, there might be some aesthetic design decisions made that allow people to feel, like they can approach these things and that they're not too intimidating or too mechanical.
I like gadgets and I like playing with complicated machinery and seeing what I can do. Interestingly, though, the more that I work with them, the more that I find that I in spite of myself, I seem to be applying a personality to them, identifying them or with them as creatures of some sort. We, as the creators of the robots, are aware of circumstances that happen to the robots and try to adapt and improve the robots, just like some kind of speeded up evolution.
NASA is developing robots which can be used to assist astronauts in outer space. Their humanoid, Robonaut, has borrowed traits from the Star Wars character Boba Fett. It was made the same size as a real astronaut in order to be able to use the equipment that humans use. The area inside the robot's head is limited, so most of the control system has been placed in the chest. During World War II, huge rooms filled with computer components were needed to calculate the trajectory of missiles. While in today's unmanned bombers, extremely tiny chips with many times the capacity are used. Boeing's Phantom SDX-4 can be directed towards a target in much the same way as one finds in some of the popular realistic action games and science fiction films.
I remember one time I was involved with an aerospace company that was looking at stormtrooper costumes to see how they could use them for military use and for armor and that sort of thing. So I think using science fiction as a starting point to go on to actual practical purposes in the real world will probably happen.
Computers will disappear. We won't be carrying them around as rectangular boxes, laptop computers or cell phones or pocket computers. They'll be everywhere in the environment, in our clothing, in our eyeglasses. Images will be written directly to our retina from our eyeglasses and contact lenses. We'll have very high-speed wireless connection to the internet at all times, so we'll be online all the time. We'll be able to enter virtual reality environments where you can be with someone else, at least visually and auditorially, and actually feel like you're with them, not just as a grainy image, but actually feel like you're in the same place with someone else in virtual reality, in a virtual environment.
One source of inspiration for today's science fiction films is Professor Hugo de Garis at Utah State University.
I guess the dominant technological development behind the kind of work that I do. Oh, by the way, I build artificial brains, so to do that I evolve electronic circuits at electronic speeds, incredibly fast, to evolve neural networks. And I can evolve a single neural network, say, of dozens, hundreds of artificial neurons or brain cells in about a second. And so at that
it means it's technologically possible to evolve tens of thousands of these circuits and put them together, connect them up into interesting ways, and make an artificial brain.
The next step in robot development is nanotechnology.
And Moore's law states that electronic capacities, the capacities of a chip, are doubling, like speed, density, stuff like that, roughly every year or two. And that law, that doubling, 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So if you take any number and multiply it by 2 enough times, you'll end up with a huge number. So if you extrapolate the capacities of these chips that we will have in, say, 20 years' time, say around the year 2020, more or less, then they'll be, the components, the electronic components will be about the size of molecules. So we'll have then nanotechnology. Nano just means a billionth, a thousandth of a millionth. And probably we'll be storing a single bit, a 0 or 1, of information on a single atom. And then you start asking yourself, well, say, imagine I've got an apple in my hand here. How many bits is that? And the answer is about a trillion.
Research teams around the world are working intensively in the field of nanotechnology. One step forward is the development of micro-robots whose moving parts are measured in nano-units. They are searching for characteristics which appear in objects the size of atoms and molecules.
This is the first silicon robot in the world that could walk. And the speed is 6 millimeters per second. And it has a load capacity of several grams, so it can carry more than 100 times its own weight.
This type of robot, which is no larger than a fly, can be used to assemble extremely small mechanical systems. At the Nanotechnology Center in the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, they are investigating medical applications. In order to see the robots, a dye is added. Nanorobots are attracted to magnetic fields, a technique which can be used to direct the robots to the right location in the human body. On the nanometric level, technology and medicine meet on equal terms.
An example, if you have a blood clot. Now, we are trying to use a medicine today which decreases the viscosity of the blood, decreases the capability of coagulation, which have side effects. Now, these small nanorobots can do the trick easier because I can put the drug on this nanorobot. They have a magnetic core. Let them inject them inside the blood stream, and I use an extra magnetic field. Just wrap a magnet around the hand where the clot, or the leg where the clot is. When they reach there, they will stay there and they will deliver their drugs. So in this case, I have no side effect and I let them to do exactly the job I want in the position and the time I wanted them to. It is probably the most important technology that we are going to see application for into the 21st century. Of course, the misuse of science, the misuse of knowledge, the misuse of technology can have a bad effect. Actually, we can, as scientists, we are trying to see the useful uses of this technology.
Robots can have many different functions and assume different shapes. They can be large or nearly invisible. But will they have souls as well?
Some people believe there's a soul and some people don't. I mean, a robotic being to me is a robotic being, but I'm the world's first robotic psychiatrist because I believe that it'll have a little bit more capabilities, that in order to interact with us, it will have to emulate us to some degree. Whether or not we truly believe it's going to have feelings synonymous to ours, they will have traits, behaviors, stimulus response, techniques. And eventually, I think the question of whether they have a soul will also come into play. perhaps it'll be able to help us tremendously from a medical perspective. I think it'll help us from a companionship perspective. I think that robots will be able to be our security guards and be our teachers. I think they'll be able to be our nannies and our lovers. I think they'll be able to be our co-workers. But I think there'll be a host of other issues. Robotic law will probably be one of the largest fields of law in the future.
Is this the beginning of a development that we humans don't yet understand the ramifications of?
There's a new kind of computing in the pipeline called quantum computing, which is exponentially, hugely superior, faster, bigger, can do more than traditional computing. So when that comes along, and you combine it with molecular scale technologies, then sometime before mid-century of 21st century, humanity is going to be realistically faced with a technology that will allow the creation of, I call them artilects, artificial intellect, so artificial intelligences, if you like.
An ethical debate has already begun. What stand should mankind take regarding robots that are too intelligent?
A rational society, a serious society, would never adopt a technology until it had figured out pretty much where it was going and what it would do, what the consequences will be. That's not what's happening now.
And so the gap between human level intelligence and machine intelligence, that gap will get smaller and smaller until virtually everybody in the advanced countries will be asking the same kinds of questions, like, is humanity going to allow the machines to become as smart as us or even go beyond?
I demand that we consider the consequences of our technology, that no technology should be adopted until it is thoroughly tested and we can tell to a certainty what the consequences will be of adopting it.
We would have no way of predicting what their attitudes towards us would be. Like, for example, I walk on these bugs on my floor and I don't care about them. They're just bugs, right? Or I flush a spider down the plug hole. I don't care. I feel so superior to those creatures. I don't care. So by analogy, maybe these artilects could treat us as mosquitoes, as a pest. We just don't know.
動物とか人間とか、言うならば神様が作ったものと人間が作ったものの間にはものすごく大きなギャップがあって、これはコンピューターがどんな速くなっても絶対に超えることはできない。
We have come a long way since the imaginative Greeks created their automatons, and industrialism laid the foundations of our modern society. Many think that we have chosen the wrong path in our quest for the good life. But still others thank the robots for having taken over so many heavy, monotonous jobs. The fact that robots are now entering our homes and taking care of the elderly and afflicted is both frightening and fascinating. According to Giardino Bruno, a monk who was executed for heresy in the year 1600, there is no outer limit to the universe. And if there is no end to the macrocosm, then perhaps there is no end to the microcosm either. And of course, this means that there is no reason to suppose that we can't go on creating as we have done so far. So we have many paths to choose from as we move along in the century of the robots.
To me, I see humanity is going to have to ask itself this really fundamental question. Which is the greater moral tragedy? Running the risk that humanity gets wiped out, or not creating these godlike creatures?